Hi, everybody, and welcome from RootsTech. We are having such a fabulous time already, and it's only day one, and it's only halfway through day one. I'm hoping some of you have been able to watch our live stream sessions I taught this morning, and I hope that you were there. And if you were, I'd love to hear what you thought. If you have questions about that lecture, I'm happy to answer them here online. And if you missed my class this morning, you can always come this afternoon at 3 Mountain. I will be teaching again on using multiple DNA test types. So hopefully you'll join me there. We did get some questions in advance, so I'm going to answer those. But if you have other questions, I am 100% happy to answer them. We'll be here together maybe like 15 minutes or so. So please feel free to share your questions in the chat, and I will answer them there. So without further ado, let's get to our first question, which is, do you think DNA knowledge will advance enough in the future to reliably use autosomal DNA further back than a 3 times great-grandparent? So those of you who've heard me teach before, you know this is a kind of a hard and fast rule that I really try to follow, and I encourage everybody to really only use autosomal DNA for 3 times greats or closer. And the reason for that is if you think about the kind of cousin that you're going to get when you're looking for a 3 times great, it's that you would need your 4th cousins to help you find 3 times great grandparents. So if you want to find a 4 times great grandparent, you would need 5th cousins. And if you want a 5 times great grandparent, you would need 6th cousins. And the problems with these kinds of distant relationships are a couple. So number one, the problem is that you just don't share very much DNA with the matches that you do have. So of course you have real, true, honest to goodness 5th cousins who are showing up as DNA matches in your DNA match list. But the amount of DNA you're sharing with them is often below our 20 centimorgan threshold. So I usually recommend people only evaluate matches who share 20 or more centimorgans. And this is because under that level, the chances that that person is not a real match, meaning they don't have a recent genealogical connection to you, is just greater. So you'll have lots and lots and lots of matches that share like 12 centimorgans. And some of them are your actual cousins, but many of them are not. Many of them, those 12 centimorgans you share, is just because you're all from Italy, or you're all from Ireland, or you're all from small town America. And pursuing that connection takes so much time, effort, and energy, and it's possible you're not even connected. So I'm really wanting you to maximize your research time by focusing your efforts on matches that matter most. The second problem is just a genealogy problem, right? Because if you don't connect with someone until a 4 or 5 times great-grandparent, that's a lot of genealogy. Because at the 3 times great-grandparent level, we have 16 ancestral couples, which means at the 4 times great-grandparent level, you have 32 ancestral couples. So you have to figure out, you have to do the genealogy for this 12 centimorgan match back to their 32 couples to see which of the 32 connects the two of you together. That just sounds really overwhelming to me because, as you know, most of our DNA matches do not have big trees, and it's up to us to build them. And so it just becomes a really difficult problem to address because not only do you have very small matches, which may or may not actually be real, but then if they are real, you have to do so much genealogy, and confirming that connection also creates a problem. Anyway, can it be done? Are people doing it? Yeah, but it's a very advanced skill. How about that? So do I think that one day it will be easier? And the answer is yes. I do think one day it will be easier. I do think that the technology that we're using right now to create and maintain our DNA matches will change. It will get better. And the best thing you can do from here on out to prepare yourself to be in a best position to take advantage of new technology is more testing. You need to test everybody that you can think of, because it's really about you being able to recreate the DNA of your ancestors, which can then help us get past that 3 times great-grandparent level. All right, so it's possible, and I think I feel like we think we're so in the middle or even at the end of all the cool stuff that DNA has to offer. You guys, we are still at the beginning. There's still so much that's going to happen within the realm of this industry that we won't even recognize it in 5 years. We'll have tools, and it's just going to be amazing. So prepare yourself, I guess. All right, so let's answer our second question. And thanks, there we go. Thanks, Connie, for coming. Sounds like you are watching RootsTech online, so nice to have you. Thanks for joining us virtually. All right, second question is, what could the MRCA be for an exact mtDNA match? I built the matches tree out 200 years, but we're still not even in the same country. So first of all, let's define some terms for those of you who aren't familiar. So MRCA means most recent common ancestor. So I call it your generation of connection. Who are we connecting with this person? And we're talking a mitochondrial DNA match. Now remember, your mitochondrial DNA traces only a direct maternal line. So all of us have the same mitochondrial DNA as our mother and our mother's mother and our mother's mother's mother, all the way back. And so the idea is that mitochondrial DNA can help you connect with your direct maternal line. Now, here's the great thing about mitochondrial DNA and Y-DNA is that we aren't limited to that 3 times great-grandparent level. You can use Y and mitochondrial DNA to go back as far as your records can go back. So it's a really powerful tool. And in fact, again, if you're not busy today at 3 Mountain, I'm going to be teaching on how to use mitochondrial DNA, Y-DNA, autosomal DNA, and X-DNA in your family history research. So I hope you'll join me at 3 Mountain. But to get back to this question, so if we're asking about how soon you will connect to a mitochondrial DNA match, the answer is not satisfying. So the problem with mitochondrial DNA is even when you have an exact match, you could be connected very recently, like in the last 2, 3, 4 generations, or you could be 20th cousins. And it's really hard to tell the difference. So one of the things you can look at is if you do share autosomal DNA with this match. So if you share autosomal DNA, then your connection has to be, back to that 3 or 4 times great-grandparent level. But if you don't, it has to be before that. So looking at autosomal DNA, again, combining those test types is going to be really helpful. Other than that, it's a little bit tricky. You've done, it sounds like, some amazing research pushing that out 200 years. It could be that you aren't connected for 20 generations. So mitochondrial DNA can be useful, but it's usually only useful when you're combining it with autosomal DNA or when you have a very specific question in mind that you're trying to answer, in which case you can then ask mitochondrial DNA to help you with that specific question. There's big news. I hope you've heard it, that Family Tree DNA has recently updated their mitochondrial DNA test and all their interface and all their offerings. They've added some fabulous new tools to their mitochondrial DNA. So it's a great time to go back and revisit your mitochondrial DNA test if you haven't recently. Their tools are really exciting. It's just, again, this test is the hardest to find useful, and yet Family Tree DNA with their new tools is helping you dive into the results themselves, even if they aren't going to be immediately actionable in your family history. So I really encourage you to go, if you haven't tested yet, to test mitochondrial DNA, but if you have, to go back and look at your results so that you can see kind of what's going on, what's new over there. Okay? All right. Let's see, again, I'll probably have a little bit of time for other questions that we didn't get in advance. So if you have a question, then you should ask it here. All right, our last question is, can you break through a brick wall ancestor by going around that brick wall with matches that you think might connect you to your unknown ancestor's earliest ancestor? So that's a good descriptive question, actually. And the answer is yes. I think that's entirely possible and part of the purpose of how we do autosomal DNA. So if you can picture this, because I'm all about pictures, right, is you think of some of your own family tree and you're stuck right here. what your DNA matches can do is to help you see who that ancestor is on the other side of that brick wall, skipping maybe 1 or 2 generations. And then what do? If you know this is your common ancestor, you need to then do descendancy research to figure out your gap, your intervening generations. And so it becomes just a genealogy problem that now, instead of trying to go back through your brick wall, you're attacking your brick wall from the top down. And often that's all you need, because you have a family that you know is yours, and then it's easier to find their records that might hook you into that missing ancestor. So I think this is exactly the purpose of using autosomal DNA, is to be able to cut through or around, like you're saying, that brick wall. Y-DNA is also very good at jumping over brick walls. In fact, Y-DNA often, and mitochondrial DNA as well, but take you kind of sometimes too far back, where you're like, oh my gosh, I'd have to do like 5 generations of descendancy research in order to find my missing ancestor. But even then, if you're stuck where you're at, isn't any route forward going to be a welcome sight? And so again, if the ancestor you're looking for is male, you're going to want to involve Y-DNA in your research. If the ancestor you're looking for is female, you'll probably want to investigate using mitochondrial DNA. So again, that's what we're talking about this afternoon. So that's probably why I'm talking about it, because it's on my mind. But it's a great practice to consider that gap, because often when we have an autosomal DNA match, we're trying to figure out how we're connected to them, and often it is a generation or 2 before that brick wall that we have. So thanks for asking that question. Thanks for all the questions, really. It looks like, oh, hey, Timothy, thanks for asking your question. It says, mitochondrial DNA help prove. I'm not familiar with this case study. I haven't read anything about this, but I'll just kind of speak generally about the practice of using mitochondrial DNA in ancient cultures. So that's where I started my career, was in using mitochondrial DNA in ancient cultures. And the thing about mitochondrial DNA is that it lasts a long time in ancient remains. So where autosomal DNA, because there's only 1 copy of autosomal DNA per cell, where mitochondrial DNA has hundreds of copies per cell. And so you think about those bones of ancient peoples that we find, there's just so much more mitochondrial DNA available. And so it was the first kind of DNA tested, back in the 90s, but it's still really useful today. And so mitochondrial DNA can help us see migration patterns of peoples. It helps us to see how peoples in different countries come back and are related to each other, and it adds like a little timeline for us, right? So there's actually a lot of those kinds of tools available in the new family tree DNA, mitochondrial DNA features. So it's over in the discovery tools, and there's a lot of this kind of linking your particular mitochondrial DNA line to an ancient culture. And so it's something that everybody can work with, I guess, if you're interested in that kind of ancient DNA migration type of information. So, and June says she likes my shirt. Thanks, June. Always nice to see you too. All right, well, if we don't have any more questions, then I'll get back to what I'm doing here, and you can get back to preparing for your next online class. And I'll see you hopefully today at 3 when we talk about different test types. And then tomorrow, I'm also giving a class about using just one DNA match, and that's at 1:30 Mountain.
And you'll go live tomorrow for more questions.
Right, so if you have more questions, I will go live the same time tomorrow. So if you have questions, you can submit them through our social media sites, or you can just show up and be prepared and ask me your question then. So I'll see all of you later this afternoon, and then I'll be right back here tomorrow, same time, same place, and we'll see you then. Thanks for joining me. Bye.